Good morning, good afternoon, or good night to those checking in to see how the library is doing. I just wanted to give a quick thanks to those that took the plunge with us last week into this new storytelling realm, and hopefully I can keep it interesting going forward. I also wanted to give a quick reminder that you can find more of our resources, activities, and programs at royaltonlibrary.org, which is our website and has more material and interesting things that you could potentially find to do throughout your week. So getting back into Polar Bears Past Bedtime. Jack and Annie had just received cryptic orders from Morgan Le Fay and then were whisked off into the unknown. Now let's just see where that journey takes them and us. So here's chapter 2 and 3 of Polar Bears Past Bedtime by Mary Pope Osborne. Let's get into it. Chapter 2, The Howling. The air was crisp and cold. Jack and Annie shivered. They looked out the window at the dark gray sky. The tree house was on the ground. There was no trees and no houses, only an endless field of ice and snow. Morgan and the owl were gone. Reread the riddle, said Annie, her teeth chattering. Jack unrolled the scroll. He read, I cover what's real and hide what's true, but sometimes I bring out the courage in you. What am I? I'd better write that down, said Jack, shivering. He pulled out his notebook and copied the riddle. Then he opened the book. He found a picture of a barren white field. He read aloud. The Arctic tundra is a treeless plain. During the dark winter, it is covered with snow and ice. In early spring, the snow falls, but the skies begin to get lighter. During the summer season, the snow and ice melt, and the sun shines 24 hours a day. It must be early spring now, said Jack. There's snow, but the sky is a little light. He turned the page. There was a picture of a man wearing a hooded coat with fur trim. Look at this guy, said Jack. He showed Annie the picture. We need his coat, said Annie. Yeah, said Jack. Listen to this. He read aloud. This seal hunter wears sealskin, clothing to protect him from icy winds. Before modern times, native people of the Arctic land lived by hunting seals, caribou, polar bears, and whales. Jack took out his notebook. He wrote, The Arctic. Seal hunters wear seal skin. He was too cold to write anymore. He clutched his pack against his chest and blew on his fingers. He wished he were back home in bed. Morgan said someone was coming to meet us, said Annie. If they don't come soon, we'll freeze to death, said Jack. It's getting darker and colder. Shh, listen, said Annie. A howling came from the distance, then more howling sounds, and then more. What's that? Said Jack. And they looked out the window. Snow was falling now. It was getting hard to see. The howling grew louder. It was mixed with yipping and yelping noises. Jack and Annie saw dark shapes coming through the snow. They seemed to be running toward the treehouse. Wolves? Said Annie. Great. That's all we need, said Jack. We're freezing, and now a pack of wolves is coming for us. Jack pulled Annie into the corner of the treehouse. They huddled close together. The howling got louder and louder. It sounded as if wolves were circling the treehouse. They whined and yelped. Jack couldn't stand it any longer. He grabbed the Arctic book. Maybe this can help us, he said. He searched for a picture of wolves. Oh, hi, Annie said. Jack looked up, caught his breath. A man was looking through the treehouse window. His face was surrounded by fur. It was the seal hunter from the Arctic book. Chapter 3, Mush. Did you come with the wolves? Asked Annie. The seal hunter looked puzzled. Did Morgan send you to us? Said Jack. I had a dream, the man said. You were in it and you needed help. Annie smiled. Morgan sends dreams sometimes, she said. We came in Morgan's treehouse. It flies through time. Oh, brother, Jack thought. Who will believe that? The seal hunter smiled, as if he was not surprised at all. We do need help, said Jack. We're freezing. The seal hunter nodded. Then he left the window. He returned at a moment later with 2 small parkas like his own. They were made of heavy, dark skins with fur-trimmed hoods. He passed one to Jack and one to Annie. Thanks, said Jack and Annie. They put the parkas on. Hooray, said Annie. It's warm. Yeah, said Jack. They're made of sealskin. Poor seals, said Annie. Just don't think about it, said Jack. He pulled his hood up. His head and up over his body were very snug now. Only his legs, hands, and feet were still freezing. Oh, thanks, said Annie. And Jack looked up. The seal hunter was giving Annie a pair of fur pants. Then he handed a pair to Jack. That's a little seal hunter friend down there. Looks friendly enough. Thanks, said Jack. He quickly pulled the pants over his pajamas. Next, the seal hunter gave each of them a pair of fur boots and mittens. Very important. Jack took off his sneakers and pulled on the boots. He wiggled his frozen fingers into the warm mittens. I have a quick question, said Jack to the seal hunter. Do you know the answer to this riddle? He opened his book and read. I cover what's real and hide what's true. But sometimes I bring out the courage in you. What am I? The seal hunter shook his head. Come, he said to Annie and Jack. Then he disappeared from the window. What about the wolves out there? Said Jack. But the seal hunter didn't answer. Jack grabbed the Arctic book and looked for a picture of the seal hunter. When Jack found the picture, he smiled. The seal hunter was standing beside a dog sled. Jack read, in cold weather, the seal hunter travels by dog sled. Siberian huskies often howl like wolves. A lead dog controls the others. The sled's runners are sometimes made up of frozen fish rolled up in sealskin. Hey, Annie, they're not wolves, said Jack. He looked up. Annie was gone. Jack threw the book into his notebook and into his pack, but he was so fat in his furry clothes that the backpack wouldn't even fit. Jack loosened the shoulder straps and tried to put the backpack on again. This time it fit. Jack looked at the small window. And that would be a tight fit too. He went out head first and barely squeezed through. Jack fell onto the snowy ground. The snow was still drifting down, and the air was misty white. Jack heard barking and howling. He moved carefully toward the noise. At first, he couldn't hear the dog sled, and he couldn't see the dog sled. But when he got closer, he counted 9 Siberian huskies. They had thick fur, big head, and pointy ears. The lead dog barked at him, and Jack stopped. He's telling you to climb on, said Annie. She was standing on the back of the sled already. The seal hunter stood next to her in the snow. Jack jumped onto the sled next to Annie, and the seal hunter cracked a long whip. Mush! He shouted. The huskies dashed off into a whirl of snow. Above them flew the snowy owl. That's chapter 2 and 3 of Polar Bears Past Bedtime from Mary Pope Osborne. And I really hope that you enjoyed it. I really hope to see you next week as well as we continue their adventures into the Arctic. Take care, and thank you for stopping by.